Hey y'all, I'm back at it again with another album spotlight, and alright, if this season has been any indication, wow was there going to be so much to write about going forward. 2024 was off to a slow start, but these past few months have absolutely exploded in great, intriguing records from all corners of multiple scenes. Even with as many albums as I'm covering here, I know for certain that I'm leaving something important out of the mix. That's how stuffed it was. Anyway, this video is going to be even more bloated than it already is if I keep stalling, so let's get into it. Album spotlight activated.
Sequência de esculacho na cara desse demônio da prata. Vai tocando a revoada direto de Santa Cruz, zona central perigosa.
Starting things off with an album that was just a bit too new for me to comfortably review in the last installment of the series. I knew I'd have to squeeze it in onto this installment though, because god, this goes so hard. As the funk Acelero genre grows in viral popularity this year, we have here an MC that is using the signature traits of the sound in some very interesting ways. Throughout Acelero, Crizin blends together the feverish, sweaty energy of the style of dance music with the harder, abstract, even kind of surreal edge that makes this an absolute treat for the ears. It's a brilliantly colorful album with so many sounds and samples cycling through the instrumentals. I'm reminded a bit of early Death Grips with a few of these tracks, though that comparison might be undermining all the sonic shifts and turns it takes throughout its length. It's never stiff nor tired, certainly helped by the socially conscious slant running throughout. And that's even before getting into how this MC navigates through it all. It's stupendous, lively, and fun as hell. No other album has gotten me up and moving as much as this one has this year, and I'm hoping I could spread some of this good energy to the rest of y'all.
Go take the piss and flap me through it, not soft full of shit, now off for the tits. Off for the tits. I gotta fix this one little bit, oh, I'll throw a fit now.
If there's one thing we don't really need right now, it's another 80s throwback project, but hang in there because this one is a little different. Allie is an artist I've been aware of for a while, though I gotta be real, I stopped paying attention to her output about a decade ago at this point. But then I heard a lot of buzz for this record, which makes sense because it's pretty cool. It's a pretty blatant throwback to 80s dance music, as I mentioned, but I think what makes this work so well is how devoted this production is to capturing that specifically dark, seedy, gothic edges of the sound. Every track is working off its own flavor of synth pop, new wave, synthwave, high energy, and even Italo disco elements, threaded together by unique hooks and synth embellishments aplenty. And even so, what makes it all come together so fruitfully is Allie herself. As cold and stuffy as these instrumentals could be, she consistently gives fluid, powerful performances to top it all. Seriously, she's got some real pipes, and how she works them can be so fascinating at times. All this tied together with a consistent theme of emotional masking, and yeah, we got ourselves a real treat here. Check it out.
Wish I knew what. Wish I knew what. Pick it up.
Women are so scary, y'all. Okay, let's get one thing out of the way. A lot of weight has been placed around Kim Gordon's age upon having made this album, and that kinda rubs me the wrong way. For the most part, this is just an experimental branch of industrial rock, only marginally rougher than what she made with Sonic Youth for decades. There's a very slight lean toward contemporary rap music, but that's really only a couple tracks anyway, and I wish more people didn't let this cloud their opinions on this record. Anyway, that has nothing to do with any of this content, because regardless of who's behind this, it's just a cool album. Rough industrial textures that take up every bit of space, shifting in mood and dynamic range as it sees fit. A natural consequence of this very abstract nature, though, is that it very much lacks for many clear hooks, and Gordon doesn't sing on this record as much as he fires off her strings of disjointed poetry. But her deadpan delivery is very fitting for the mundanity of the subject matter, namely her reaction to modern corporate technology and how social media has come to define the living world. This one's definitely not for everyone, but it sure is fascinating. Certainly a worthy listen to those who live in the noisier side of the pond. London performer Jazmin is an artist most known for their nightmarish brand of industrial pop, heard all over their 2020 debut album Worldwide Torture. For their follow-up, however, they've toned down this image, opting for more of a strings-driven pop rock palette that calls to mind the mid-2000s sounds of artists such as Avril Lavigne and Ashley Simpson. It's a sound that does feel a bit limited, and I won't deny that a lot of these tracks tend to blend together in my mind. But what makes it all work so well is Jazmin's penchant for strong, potent melodies with a great emotional core throughout. Their vocal performance is mostly pretty low-key, but one that brings such a personable layer to the sound, which is absolutely crucial in their coverage of such wide personal themes as abuse, trauma, addiction, and recovery. The album is, as I said, not incredibly multi-dimensional in its textures, but it more than makes up for it with its remarkable honesty and the artist's gripping personality quite difficult to so much as glance away from. I admittedly didn't expect this album to have much of an impact on myself as it has, but it really has. Check it out. After I covered Gouge away in my singles roundup a few months ago, I am pleased to announce that their latest album, Deep Sage, absolutely kicks ass. It's such a nice burst of punk energy, blending elements of post-hardcore and post-punk to create a sound that is so dynamic in all its edges. Right off the get-go, it really hits the ground running with some feverish guitar work, animated drumming, and a vocalist who takes in this energy and expertly implements it into these narratives of turmoiled relationships and internal depression. And the way these tracks flow into one another so seamlessly is just fascinating. It just sounds good as hell, an absolute treat with every single listen. Some of these songs could stand to be a bit longer, perhaps a bit more fleshed out here and there, but when this album hits, man does it absolutely go. Not to mention that Dallas is still an absolutely wonderful, beautiful closer. Definitely do check this out if you want some gigantic punk emotions all connected by a thread of stunning, mature poignancy. It rocks so hard. Oh hell yeah, now this rules! So I had been following along with the lead up to Frail Body's sophomore album, and after being incredibly taken aback by the singles, I decided to check out their 2019 debut, A Brief Memoriam. And, well, I guess the title should have hinted this, but while they'd absolutely nailed their brand of intense, heartbreaking screamo in the wake of a loved one's loss, the record does fall frustratingly short for how much I loved it. Nonetheless, I'm glad to report that Artificial Bouquet remedies this, and then some. Not only does it feel that much more augmented in length, but the sound is incredibly clean for how dense it is in its noise and melodic interplay. The vocals are rough and ripping, yet are also terrifically balanced by the thick sheets of guitar that define each track as they blend into one another like one segmented whole. And even beyond the searing power of its toughest tracks, the album still leaves plenty of room for moments of quiet spaces, the necessary openness to allow the emotional range of anger and hopelessness to ring true. Crucial as it picks up with the running theme of desperate mourning that defined the last one. All things considered, it's a hell of a ride, and I could not recommend it highly enough. Let's just continue onward with the noisy territory, shall we? I discovered Vancouver noise rock project SENTRIES by complete chance, and, well, I'm really glad I did. If you enjoy bands like Squid and Proto-Martyr, yet also wish that this particular brand of post-punk wasn't so shy with the distortion pedal, well, boy do I have an album for you. It's not so much that these tracks are noisy, than the fact that the band shifts their particular flavor of noise to whatever mood or sound they see fit. From angry, simmery emotional stabs, to danceable grooves, to more fluid moments of atmospheric intrigue, this is a more diverse album than one would expect on the surface. As a result, well, I'll admit that it lacks for much of a true cohesion across the album, not to mention that the slightly longer closing track gives it a more lopsided feel than I'd like. Nonetheless, it's a really neat, bite-sized bit of righteous energy that I could always use in my life. If this sounds like anything you might be into, you'd probably like it too.
You know that time can take you for a ride, can take you by surprise. Maybe you're all snake eyes, baby. Tell me.
I, like many others, first became aware of Bronx musician Alinda Segarra's project Hurray for the Riff Raff back in 2017 with their brilliant album The Navigator. I'll talk more about that record another time, but I'll admit that I haven't been following them as closely as I'd like all these years later. On that note, their latest offering, The Past Is Still Alive, has filled me in on what I'd been missing. And that's rich, deserty textures of tumbling country rock chords and rhythms carving out some of the most quietly enthralling melodies of the entire year. And much like they had in The Navigator, Segarra here exquisitely peels back the layers of dense mythos that has made up the allure of American life, particularly in the rural parts of the country. These lyrics bring to mind the wide-open freedom of those golden plains and rumbling trains, while also replete with references to the poverty, addiction, and struggle that has defined so much of Segarra's upbringing. And what makes it all come together so well is the ever-prosperous thread of growth and optimism that runs throughout each track. These images are dusty, but also imbued with that familiar search for something resembling comfortable living within difficult periods periods as these. Some things take time, after all.
Leaning on the windowsill, you could write me someday, and I think you will. We could see the sadness as a gift and still.
Adrianne Lenker has demonstrated a truly impressive skill at churning out some of the most lovely, compelling tunes of the modern indie sphere, both as a solo artist and in her work with Big Thief. And god damn it, she's done it again. Bright Future is one of the most striking records of the whole year, and it's very much due to the delicately arranged folk instrumentation and Lenker's incredibly poignant lyricism performed through her signature wisp of a voice. The gentleness of the atmosphere, as well as the rudimentary recording and production techniques, give the music this warm intimacy that I absolutely adore hearing in folk music. The quieter tracks brush away any unneeded artifice, similarly to how Leonard Cohen had done in his early masterworks. Regardless even, there are a good number of truly great country-tinged tracks strewn throughout this one, ones with much brighter, complex instrumentation. It's an album that is certainly more than one would assume from a surface level, a great representation of Lenker performing at the utmost height of her abilities, and doing so quite beautifully. Easily one of the very best albums of the year, and considering what other gorgeous music has graced my eardrums throughout the year, well, that's saying something.
Dreams of you, vision.
I'm not going to mince words with this one. Diamond Jubilee is almost certainly the most highly acclaimed independent album of the year so far, and as such, I can't really add anything new to the conversation that hasn't been remarked upon again and again. I will say though, yeah, the praise is so real for this one. Along 32 tracks and 2 hours, we get a collection of tunes focused on nostalgic longing, given to us through classically composed melodies from a variety of musical styles, as if we're turning the radio dial on some forgotten oldie station. As such, it also vividly brings to mind the grandeur of pop music from the early radio age, presented through such a dreamy, decadent, atmospheric lens. And there's a really poetic connecting thread between the hazy memories of good times past, paired with the obscurity of the golden age of radio itself, the recollection of these times residing in the minds of only those who are around to see it, a number that only gets smaller with each passing day. Likewise, well, we all only get older. The days pass by us with only faint traces left behind for us to examine. And as such, Diamond Jubilee captures that very specific bittersweet feeling of that dwell into this nostalgia. The perceptible knowledge of just how far behind these simpler times lie, and how all we can do now is just take in the present day as it exists before us, with its history lingering in that sweet melancholic backdrop of it all. A little too early for me to call it my absolute favorite album of the year, but I've listened to it a number of times at this point, and its magic has not worn off, even a little bit. Something so special, for sure. We've been dwelling in some softer sounds for a bit, so let's jump right into some chaos music, starting with one of the best hardcore records I've discovered this year so far. So, Hammok is a screamo band from Norway, and they just kind of stumbled into my radar with this, their debut record, and holy crap does this rule. Huge gripping tidal waves of guitar right from the get-go, accented by pounding drums, mathy rhythms, and the defiant screams of their vocalist, and it keeps up that energy from beginning to end, hardly taking much of a breather along the way. This is music made to be played loudly, plain and simple. I will admit that a number of these tracks tend to fall along the same general playing field, and it's clear that the guys still have some work to do in carving out a unique personality all their own. Nonetheless, I have listened to this a handful of times by now, and each time I am totally engrossed by the slashing, sweaty energy of the sound. I just can't get enough of it. If you're looking for something new along these lines, I'll gladly point you in this direction. I do think you'll like what you hear. Hey, thanks Todd. Alright, so we've got another debut album here, and a really exciting one at that. DC queercore band Ekko Astral give us their collection of biting punk jams that have immediately left their mark in my brain. The automatic comparison I'm tempted to give for this one is to Underscore, specifically for lead vocalist Jael Holzman's bratty delivery and personal anecdotes about living as a trans woman, along with the band's impeccable skill at blending the playfulness scattered throughout this record with a handful of more serious, contemplative moments. But, well, that's about as far as I'm willing to stretch the comparison, because the voice voice professed throughout the record is entirely their own, told to us through an array of spunky guitars, frantic drum beats, and fiery chant-along melodies. And overall even, this is such a catchy album, with a variety of hooks and rhythms that got me jamming along from start to finish. I'm always down for this type of outspoken music that just digs its teeth deep into the scene, while leaving behind some truly unforgettable, easily digestible jams in its wake. Check it out if you love searing pop punk by rambunctious women. I know I do. Man, I am so glad I stumbled upon Stomach Book this year. I listened to both of the musicians' albums recently, and they're both some of the most unique, wildest breaths of fresh air I've stumbled upon as of late. I hope I get to talk about her debut at some point, but for now, it's her sophomore album that gets the spotlight. This is just such a wild mixture of clashing and careening sound, from dirty guitars to turbulent drums to boisterous horns to quirky keyboard riffs, and so much more. And, well, it slaps. Seriously, some of the stickiest hooks I've heard in any album this year. It's a very unique blend of post-hardcore and dark cabaret flavors, using the maximalist elements of both of these sounds to their fullest in order to loudly display the artist's stories of loss and trauma. It is a lot, in so many ways. And it's also not a record that's going to work for everyone, but to me at least, it's absolutely impossible not to admire the chaotic, bleeding ambition on full display here. It's one of the purest examples I've heard this year of an artist angrily throwing everything against the wall and making some incredibly effective art out of the splatters left behind. And it's all the better for it. Can't wait to listen to it a bunch more this year. So I listened to the Medians arc the same day as Stomach Book's album, causing them both to become intrinsically linked in my brain. Apart from them both being made by trans furries, yes, they are also both absolutely stuffed to the brim with their own unique brand of moody abrasion. In Roxy Radcliffe's case, it's more of a hyperpop album with churning industrial elements stacked atop each other and blasting outward in every which direction. And by these means, we get a near 90-minute block of glitchy goodness laboring on the importance of artistic and personal self-expression, with a giant middle finger to generative AI for good measure. Strangely enough, I am also reminded of Kim Gordon's album when I listen to this, with its prickliness similarly utilized as a tool to push her message forward. Unlike Gordon, though, Radclyffe is much more direct with his message. Well, alright, the layers of noise and static stuff throughout this record do make this near indecipherable. In general, the self-indulgence on this one is incredibly off the walls, and as such, it's a bit of a tough one to sit through. But also, yeah, that's kind of the point. She's not here to cater to the comforts of listeners, and she makes that so abundantly clear. And this is the kind of acerbity you just don't see every day. I can't help but admire it. Well worth checking out for sure. I must repeat, women are so scary. We've been on a roll with some of the rawest, noisiest records from women I've heard all year long, so let's make this a quadrifecta with this album. I saw this come up on my release radar a couple months back and decided to just go ahead and binge this band's entire back catalog, and it was really rewarding. They're working with some of the strongest, heaviest sludge metal sounds I've ever heard. With that said, yeah, they're at their most potent here, with absolutely filthy guitar riffs slashing through these disturbing narratives of assault and trauma. The tone of the music fully mirroring the ugliness of the situations at hand. I've got to give it up especially to lead vocalist Megan Osterwitz, who has got one of the best voices I've heard in any metal band recently. Seriously, her performances are just plain nasty in all the best ways. This is far and away one of the most uncompromising records I've heard all year, and it definitely takes a strong temperament to stomach some of these pummeling noises. For what it's worth though, this is rough as all hell, and it's in its roughness where its strengths really make itself known. Give it a go, you might like what you hear. Jumping back into some, normal music for a bit now. And we continue with the trend of me discovering new artists on a plain whim. Well, okay, LA Project Meatbodies have been around for about a decade now, but this is the first time I've heard of them. And yeah, this is a really solid slice of cool, unassuming garage rock. The sound of these guitars are thick and crunchy, but the general feel is one of gentle contemplation, certainly set forth by the mid-tempo strut of these hooks and the gentle delivery of this lead vocalist. These guys are certainly going for more of a retro flavor to their sound, their dense riffs and harmonic structure calling back to 90s era era stoner rock and shoegaze. And I do think they nail this hybrid style pretty well, coming out the other end with their own brand of mind-bending pop goodness as they do so. And with the themes of personal growth and mental reinvention of its speaker, all spread along an hour of solid grooves and flows, it's one hell of a ride for sure. An instantly gratifying collection of guitar jams sure to reach into the hearts of any lover of chill psych rock out there. I just love when music is good, y'all, and this one fits the bill for sure. I really liked a handful of the Lemon Twigs tunes from last year, but as far as that accompanying album was concerned, I felt like there was a lack of good cohesion or personality outside of the singles. And, well, the Daddario brothers have certainly improved with this effort. The strength of the singles remains, but also the sharpness is more evenly spread across the length, not to mention the variety on display. This truly sounds like a vibrant cherry picking of unique 60s and 70s pop rock moods, and it's all so much fun. And that's all in spite of the fact that, yes, this is a bit of an indulgent worship of the Brian Wilson-esque wall of sound production from the old days. It brings to mind that one Todd Rundgren covers album where he attempted to replicate the pre-existing songs as closely to the original as possible. It's that, except, well, these are all fully original compositions, one that just happened to mirror these classic production atmospheres so closely, it's damn impressive. And, well, that's just a testament to how terrific these guys are at replicating this mood from the ground up. It's a formula that I have a lot of affinity for, and now there are more songs in this lexicon than ever before. That rules. And this album rules. Yeah.
How many rotations am I gonna get with you?
So, Adeem the artist first came upon my radar back with their 2021 album Cast Iron Pansexual, with their penchant for aching honesty across a spare, unadorned atmosphere that enhanced the directness of their words. And their 2022 album White Trash Revelry only further boosted these strengths, the instrumentation much more layered, but their words remaining as poignant as ever. As for this one, well, okay, just gonna say that, yes, this is my least favorite of the three. I do feel like there's an undeniable distance between the narratives of which Adeem sings and the production choices to present these words. It's still good, just a bit more reserved than I would have liked. Which is to say that the best tracks here are the ones where the instrumentation is quieter, less flashier, and we get these full-blooded stories of atypical relationships and anger at the world's injustices, presented with as impassioned of a delivery as I'd expect from Adeem. It's also a much less hopeful album than I'm used to hearing from them, which, yeah, with as much as is currently ongoing with the world right now, I get it. All of this is to say that while this might not be my preferred selection from Adeem's catalog, it is a worthwhile, certainly pertinent addition, and I'm always welcome to hear more from them.
'Cause I'm exactly what you said, and better off than dead. Can't get me out of my own bed.
I don't know a ton about Jessica Pratt, but I do know that her album Quiet Signs absolutely blew me off my feet back in 2019, with its delicately folky atmospheric range and Pratt's strange but striking vocals. And her latest, Here in the Pitch, is somehow even better. The most immediate difference between the two albums is, of course, the instrumentals, as Pratt trades into softer, minimal chamber folk for some more layered textures, taking cues from 60s sunshine pop in music and environment. In addition to this, the melodies and hooks are that much sharper, certainly a side effect of taking from such renowned musical traditions as these. It's just some damn good music, in a very traditional sense. And her unique voice continues to strike these same emotional chords for me, with her impeccable ability to match the warmth and playfulness of these tunes. On top of it all even, there's a hint of melancholic loneliness that continues to line the edges of these scenes, with all of these interlacing moods crafting a really fine tension that just hits really close to my heart for sure. One might be tempted to brush this off as a style over substance record, but when the style itself is enrapturing enough to keep me listening, I say that's an absolute win nonetheless. This is just so gorgeous.
I could frame the flame, hold the smog of another day. Maybe I'm the one, just the sky, some prodigal. I can find that.
As for some more stylish endeavors, here's another artist I want to highlight, though from a wholly different scene entirely. Now, there are a number of British post-punk bands making the waves right about now, but Leeds collective Drala are bringing in a sound that not a lot of them are dipping into, that being their combination of contemporary dance punk with classic gothic no-wave trademarks. This can particularly be heard in the deadpan delivery of vocalist Lucille Brown, as well as the band's angular riffs and rough saxophone embellishments, carving out a number of distinctly dark and moody atmospheres I'd just don't hear a ton of nowadays. Much of it is certainly taking cues from a number of preceding bands in the scene, but it results in a pleasingly open yet anxious sound, with a fiery spear of cynicism running through it all to keep the mood sly and welcoming. I'll admit that this is the kind of album that feels fit for my ears and my ears alone, but hey, if you're liking some of what you're hearing right now, I'd say go ahead and try this on for size. It may be exactly what you need to satiate those particular cravings of mysterious dance punk, of which we could always use more. Okay, this was a pretty big surprise for me. Now, I've been keeping a bit of an eye on Willow's career for nearly a decade apparently, wow. And I've already been really impressed with how well she's transitioned into the alternative rock sphere in recent years. Transparent Soul is still a banger. And now here she is again, making yet another shift into a freeform fusion blend of art pop with heavy jazz textures, a sound she totally nails. Her lyrical depth has also gotten considerably stronger here, with themes of spirituality and personal growth steeped into these tunes, and as always, wow, can this girl sing. My one major gripe though is that this album is so darn lopsided. An extremely strong start that peters out for a bit, dwells into some less fleshed out songs, and never really finds its footing again until that extremely strong closer. Though I guess with her making some steps into some unfamiliar territory, a bit of reluctance is perhaps to be expected. Would really love to hear a full array of tracks as detailed and interesting as the strongest cuts here. Absolutely not surprised that she's grown into these new textures so well, and I'm more than excited to see what else she'll gift us. We all know Billie Eilish, but Hit Me Hard and Soft has shown that perhaps there's even more than meets the eye with the pop singer. Not gonna lie, this is my favorite release of hers to date, and I really liked Happier Than Ever also. There is such a significant growth in her ambition with this one. It's the first time I've truly felt like she's making consistently active attempts to break out of the box she's been placed into throughout her career. This is certainly heard in the genre experimentation, with the wider palettes of art pop and even electronic music making their way into these mixes, but also with her delve into some more personal topics, such as her sexuality, turmoiled relationships, and internal depression. This has also got some of her strongest vocal performance I've heard to date. Like, damn, she's gotten so good through the years for sure. And big shout out to Phineas as well, whose production work is just as incredible, a full and open yet phenomenally textured sound that helps propel Eilish's performance all that much more. The record's got all the structural shortcomings I've come to expect from most albums by pop stars, but also does a terrific job at working past these obstacles and coming out the other end with something truly special. This is an absolute treat, for sure. Now here's something that truly came out of left field for me. So I've been quietly working on some other big project that will remain a secret for now. But in gathering listening material for this, I stumbled across San Francisco musician Hana Vu, found out she's got an album coming out, and decided to give it a go. And yeah, as you can surmise from me reviewing this right now, it's quite good. It's a pretty solid collection of pop rock jams that navigate along a number of themes such as existential longing and emotional fatigue, all given to us through some pleasant, clean instrumentals and hooks that go on for days. And in Vu's talent for soaring anthemic narratives of internal conflict, I'm reminded of similar impassioned works by Indigo D'Souza, another fave of the channel. It's true that none of these tracks are going to change the world, or even just the scope of the indie pop scene as we know it or anything, and the energy to this one does wane a tad in the final third. Then again, I know good music when I hear it, and this absolutely rules. Really looking forward to checking out her 2021 album soon. I've heard of vaporwave act Death's Dynamic Shroud in passing through the years, and I'm pleased that I finally got to listen to a record of theirs, and as a collaborative project, no less. This is one of those electronic works that is pretty tough for me to put a finger on. There's a lot of neat grooves to this, like a traditional dance record, and I've definitely found myself moving along with it from time to time. And yet, the diversity of these textures is what really makes it special. From the jagged, abstract synth punches to more fuller atmospheric samples and grooves that give it that focused feel sorely needed to keep it from going off the rails. As a result, yeah, this album is pretty damn fascinating, even addicting at points. For as rough and chaotic as it could be from time to time, the artists do a great job at letting the strongest hooks lead the way and dominate the atmospheres when most crucial. And like I said, it's all about the interesting variation in this one. No one track can be confused for any other, yet it all still sounds and feels like a cohesive whole all its own. I'll admit that I'm not great with largely instrumental works such as these, but when something is as consistently fun and groovy as this album is, I can't help but be impressed. If no one's got me, I know that neo-psychedelic indie rock has got me. So this is the third album from Brooklyn at Crumb, and let me say that in the sea of one-note hypnagogic pop that floods my release radar from time to time, it's so nice to see a group doing something a little different with the sound. Some of the songs on this album feel so light, with the delicate singing and soft instrumentals seemingly floating atop the mix like a gentle cloud. It's a really calming listening experience. And despite this lightness, the band does not lose sight of the melodies, grooves, and even some creative synth embellishments to keep the listener's attentions from wavering. Big props to the drum work as well, kind of an underrated element of this record that I couldn't help but fixate on with subsequent listens. I will say though that for as cool as the sound is, the levels of diversity within the sounds are few and far between. Would like to see these guys branch out into something more layered and complex in future material, but for now, I'll stay jamming along with these soft, meditative grooves.
Love changes things, changes what change.
And finally, let's end on the new Beth Gibbons album, shall we? I was excited to hear that Beth Gibbons was releasing her first new album of solo material in over 20 years, so of course I hurried to check out her solo debut. And that's a good record, but I was primarily astounded with how well she transferred her signature ambient spookiness from her Portishead work into a more folk and jazz atmosphere. Unsurprisingly, it's no less the case here. Well, let's remove the jazz and insert a more chamber pop environment, blend it all together with the warming tones of Gibbons' voice and themes of existential growth, personal belonging, and the impermanence of life. Yeah, this is fantastic. Helps a lot that there is just so much density in the arrangements this time around. These sonic environments filled to the brim with organic strings, lush horns, and thick percussion that give some real emotional weight to the words Gibbons sings so immaculately. I'd say that this lacks for any true big standout moments here, but that's also to remark that this whole album is a consistently hypnotic experience from beginning to end. All in all, it's great, and I would definitely recommend it for lovers of music on the mysterious and earthy side of the scene. Absolutely check it out. And that's all for now. Like I said, lots of cool stuff, some of which waits for you to check out, I hope. In any case, let me know if you enjoyed any of these albums, what else you've been listening to recently, or anything else music related that catches your interest. As always, take care, and I'll see you next time.